We were friends, Alicent. Do you remember?
I was afraid, Rhaenyra.
You sharpened him into a blade and aimed him at my family, and now you stand here and tell me you never wanted this?
Here is part 2 of a mother's wrath. Queen Rhaenyra's wrath. The gates of King's Landing groaned shut, and Daemon Targaryen laughed. Not a smirk, not a chuckle. A real, full-throated laugh that rang across the Blackwater from the saddle of Caraxes, because Daemon understood, with the clarity of a man who had waited his entire life for this moment, that Aegon had just sealed himself inside a city with no Vhagar, no army, and 4 enemy dragons circling overhead.
He closed the gates?
Daemon said to himself, still laughing.
The boy actually closed the gates.
He leaned forward, pressed his palm against the Blood Wyrm's neck, and whispered a single word in High Valyrian.
Dracarys.
The first blast of dragonfire hit the Iron Gate. Not the Red Keep, not the Sept, not the Dragonpit, the Iron Gate, because Daemon Targaryen was a soldier before he was a prince, and soldiers destroy defenses before they destroy castles. The ancient doors did not burn so much as cease to exist. They vanished in a column of red-orange fire that climbed 300 feet and turned the flanking towers into rivers of molten stone. Every scorpion emplacement along the southern wall detonated as the tar-soaked bolts ignited. Caraxes screamed down the battlements in a long, devastating run, and his shrieks bounced off the burning stone like the laughter of a god who had just been told a very good joke. From the south, Meleys struck the harbor. Rhaenys brought the Red Queen in low, so low her copper wingtips dragged furrows in the dark water and hit the royal fleet broadside. 23 warships, 6 dromons, a dozen supply galleys. They didn't burn, they evaporated. The bay boiled. Ships split apart from the inside as their stores of pitch erupted. Within minutes, the harbor was a graveyard of fire and twisted iron, and the escape route by sea was gone. High above, Jace circled on Vermax, watching the northern gates. Thousands of small folk streamed out, carrying children, carrying nothing, running, and he let them go. His mother's orders. He was 17 years old, and his brother was dead, and below him the world was on fire, and he held his position because it was the only thing left he could do for Luke. And Rhaenyra waited. She sat on Syrax above the Blackwater and watched Daemon shatter the walls, watched Rhaenys annihilate the fleet, watched the smoke rise in columns so vast they would be visible from Harrenhal, and she felt nothing. She was a vessel that had been scoured out by grief and filled back up with something that was not rage exactly, but the absence of everything that was not rage. The walls were breached. The fleet was ash. The scorpions were slag, Rhaenyra whispered to Syrax. The golden dragon banked east and flew straight for the Red Keep. Syrax landed on the outer wall of Maegor's holdfast with an impact that cracked the ancient stone. Her wings spread wide enough to block the sun. Her jaws parted, the furnace in her throat casting an orange glow across the rampart. Rhaenyra dismounted. She walked through the shattered remnants of the great window and into the throne room. Glass crunched beneath her boots, smoke curled around her shoulders, and there, standing before the Iron Throne, like 2 figures in a painting of their own ruin, were Aegon and Alicent. Aegon had his sword drawn. The conqueror's crown sat crooked on his brow. His hands were bleeding from gripping the throne. His knees were shaking so badly the scabbard at his hip rattled against his leg. Alicent stood beside him. Green dress, 7-pointed star at her breast, spine straight, face white, the perfect mask of composure, except for the tears, silent, involuntary, streaming down both cheeks like cracks forming in porcelain. Rhaenyra stopped 10 paces from the throne.
Remove the crown,
She said, quiet, almost gentle. The most terrifying sound in the room.
Kneel and beg for mercy, not for yourself, but for my father's memory.
He loved you, Alicent. He loved your children. And it was the only mistake he ever made.
Aegon's sword arm trembled.
I am the king. I was crowned before the realm. The faith anointed me.
The faith anointed a usurper.
Rhaenyra's voice cracked through the smoke like a whip.
Every lord in this kingdom swore oaths to me. In this very hall, on their knees, before your mother, before the court, before the gods. I was named heir when you were still suckling at Alicent's breast.
My father changed his mind.
Your father changed nothing.
She took a step forward.
Your father loved me. Your father chose me. Your father spent 20 years preparing me for this throne. And when he died, your mother stole his crown before his body was cold and put it on the head of a boy who never wanted it.
She turned to Aegon, really looked at him, and something shifted in her voice. Something almost like pity.
You didn't want this, did you, Aegon? You never wanted the crown. I know that. Everyone in this room knows that. You wanted your wine and your tourneys and your brothels, and your mother dragged you to the Sept and forced a crown on your head because she was afraid of what I would do to her children. And do you know what the tragedy is? I would have done nothing. I would have let you all live. I would have given your mother a seat of honor, and your brothers lands and titles, and every comfort the realm could offer. All she had to do was honor my father's wish.
Aegon's sword lowered an inch. His eyes were wet.
But she couldn't, could you, Alicent?
Alicent's voice emerged like a blade wrapped in silk.
Your father spoke Aegon's name on his deathbed. He said, "The prince that was promised." Aegon
He was talking about the prophecy.
Rhaenyra's composure detonated.
Aegon the Conqueror's dream, the song of ice and fire. He was feverish and dying, and he was remembering the words I told him I would protect. And you took a dying man's last breath and twisted it into a justification for stealing his daughter's birthright.
Alicent flinched, the first real flinch. The mask cracked all the way through.
I believed.
You believed what you wanted to believe. You always have.
Rhaenyra's voice dropped to something low and devastated.
We were friends, Alicent. Do you remember? Before your father turned you into a weapon. Before you decided that your blood deserved what mine had earned. We were girls together. I trusted you with every secret I had. And you used them all against me.
Alicent's lips parted. For a moment, just a moment, the woman behind the mask was visible. The girl who had read histories in the Godswood. The friend who had brushed Rhaenyra's hair and listened to her cry about her mother's death. That girl looked out from behind 20 years of politics and poison and whispered,
I was afraid, Rhaenyra. I was always afraid. My father said your family would kill my children.
And so you decided to kill mine first?
The words landed like a sword through the chest. Alicent's mouth closed. Her eyes went wide. And in the silence that followed, the only sound was the city burning outside.
Aemond did not act on my orders, I swear to you. I never told him to.
You didn't have to tell him.
Rhaenyra's voice shook, not with weakness, but with the tremor of a woman holding back an earthquake.
You raised him on poison, Alicent. Every night, every whisper. We're bastards, Aemond. They're strongs. The throne is yours by right. You sharpened him into a blade and aimed him at my family, and now you stand here and tell me you never wanted this?
She gestured at the burning city beyond the shattered window.
My son was 13 years old. He went as a messenger. He swore on the seven-pointed star that he would not fight. And your son chased him through a storm on the largest dragon in the world and tore him apart over open water.
Her voice cracked, the first crack.
They found Caraxes' head on the rocks. Luke's body was never recovered. I couldn't even bury my boy, Alicent. The sea took him.
Alicent was crying openly now, not the silent tears from before, real sobs, the ugly heaving kind that strip away every pretense.
I'm sorry. I never wanted. Not Luke. not a child.
Rhaenyra extended her hand.
Kneel and end this right now before anyone else has to die.
Alicent looked at her son. Aegon looked at his mother. And in the span of a single heartbeat, the usurpation collapsed. Aegon reached up with both hands and lifted the crown from his head. His fingers trembled around it, this circle of Valyrian steel and rubies that had cost so much blood. He set it on the floor at Rhaenyra's feet.
Mercy.
He said, small, cracked, a boy's voice. Rhaenyra picked up the crown, held it, felt the weight.
Where was Luke's mercy, Aegon?
He had no answer. She placed the crown on her own head. It fit as if it had been forged for her. The roar came from the south, deep, ancient, seismic. A sound that cracked the walls of the throne room and made every dragon in King's Landing answer. Syrax with a territorial hiss. Caraxes with a screaming challenge from the broken harbor. Vhagar. Aemond had seen the smoke from 50 leagues away. He had pushed the ancient she-dragon harder than she had flown in decades. And now he came over the southern horizon like a thunderstorm made flesh. The largest living dragon in the world. 181 years old. Wings that blocked the sun. He saw the burning city. He saw 3 dragons circling the Red Keep. He saw the destruction, and he did not turn.
Rhaenyra!
His voice lashed across the sky.
Come out and face me, or do you only burn castles when the dragon's not home?
Rhaenyra heard him. She was standing in the throne room with the crown on her head. She heard the voice of the man who had murdered her son, and the void inside her ignited. She walked to the window, climbed onto Syrax, rose into the burning sky. Daemon was already moving. Caraxes dove towards Vhagar from the west. Rhaenys brought Meleys screaming in from the south, and Rhaenyra came from the east, golden Syrax blazing in the firelight. 3 against 1. Aemond saw them converging and bared his teeth. His sapphire eye, the jewel that sat in the socket where Luke had taken his real one years ago, burned cold blue. Caraxes struck first. Daemon brought the Blood Wyrm in from below, beneath Vhagar's belly, and raked a gash 40 feet long across her underscales. Black blood rained on the streets. Vhagar screamed and rolled, snapping at empty air. Caraxes was already gone. Meleys hit second. Rhaenys drove the Red Queen into Vhagar's left wing at full speed. Teeth found membrane, claws locked. For a terrible moment, they spun together through the burning air. Then Meleys tore free, and Vhagar's wing trailed shredded membrane like a torn sail. The great she-dragon faltered. Her wing beats stuttered. She tried to climb, but the damaged wing could not hold, and she began to list, slowly, massively, like a warship taking on water. Then Syrax came. From above, straight down, the falcon stoop. Rhaenyra drove the golden dragon into Vhagar's spine with all 4 claws and forced her earthward in a screaming spiral. Vhagar thrashed, blasted fire in every direction, but Syrax held, jaws locked around the base of her neck, and together they plunged. At the last moment, Rhaenyra pulled free. Vhagar hit the hill of Rhaenys and collapsed the Dragonpit. The dome shattered inward. Stone and fire erupted skyward in a column that reached the clouds, and Aemond lay in the rubble, armor shattered, sapphire cracked, blood pouring from his skull. He heard boots crunching through the debris. He opened his one remaining eye. Rhaenyra stood above him, crown on her head, ash in her hair. Even now, broken, pinned beneath the wreckage, his lip curled.
You think this makes you queen?
I was always the queen.
You're a pretender, a woman playing at war with borrowed dragons and borrowed rage.
Borrowed?
Rhaenyra crouched, brought her face close to his.
This rage isn't borrowed, Aemond. You gave it to me, over the waters of Shipbreaker Bay, when you killed a boy who was running away.
Aemon's sneer faltered, just for a heartbeat.
He owed me an eye.
He was 13 years old.
He was a bastard strong that cut out my eye at 10.
He was a child, and he was my child.
Rhaenyra's voice broke on the last word, not from weakness, from a grief so deep it had become structural, load-bearing, the thing that held her upright when everything else had collapsed. Aemond stared at her. For the first time, something moved behind his eye that was not cruelty, not remorse. Aemond was incapable of remorse, but recognition. the understanding at last that the boy he killed over Shipbreaker Bay was not a debt to be collected. He was a person. He was loved, and his death had broken something in the world that could never be repaired.
Do it then.
Aemond whispered.
I won't beg.
I know you won't, you see. That's the difference between us, Aemond. You could never beg. You could never bend. You could never look at another person and see anything other than a threat or a target. My son begged. In the storm, on Caraxes' back, he begged you to let him go home. And you didn't.
She turned to Caraxes, spoke one word in High Valyrian, soft, almost gentle, the way a mother speaks a lullaby. Golden fire consumed Aemond one eye, and the debt was paid. By nightfall, the dance of the dragons was over. King's Landing smoldered, but the Red Keep stood, the Sept stood, and in the throne room, by torchlight and the distant glow of the dying harbor fires, Rhaenyra climbed the Iron Throne. The ancient swords bit her hands, blood welled in her palms. She did not flinch. Daemon stood at the base of the steps, dark sister in his hand, something in his eyes that might have been pride or love, or the satisfaction of a man who always believed fire was the answer.
Long may she reign.
The hall echoed it back, slowly, then louder, then a roar. Later, much later, after the hall was empty and the torches burned low, Rhaenyra sat alone on the Iron Throne. The city glowed orange through the shattered windows. Hammers rang in the distance. Voices called for water. The rage was gone, spent, and in its place was the thing she had been running from since the moment Daemon whispered those words in her ear. She closed her eyes, and she whispered a name that no one else could hear. She had won. She had burned them all. She had taken back her crown in a single day of dragonfire so devastating that maesters would write about it for 1,000 years. And she would have given every bit of it back, the throne, the crown, the 7 kingdoms, to hear her boy's voice one more time. That is the tragedy of Rhaenyra Targaryen. In every timeline, in every world, she was never meant to choose between being a queen and being a mother, but the Game of Thrones gave her no other option. And when she chose fire. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with every Rhaenyra fan you know. Drop a comment below. Was she justified? Was the price worth it? Or did the throne take something from her that dragonfire could never burn back? Until next time, Dracarys.